Hello everyone, this is me as the editor again, offering you another disclaimer. In this episode we will discuss my thoughts on suicide when I was a child, and we will discuss some of the abuse that I suffered when I was a child. I will give an example of what my abuse was like. And I know that those things can trigger people. I know that some people are extremely sensitive to the concept of suicide and are unwilling to even have a discussion about it. I know that that's kind of a state of being in our society, is just, well, it's terrible and no one should ever do it and let's never talk about this again. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my feelings about that when I was a kid. I'm not in that place right now. I don't want you to be worried about me. I'm not even close to that place. I haven't had those thoughts in a few years at this point. And we will also discuss, as I said, some of the abuse that I suffered as a child. Specifically, I give an example of a situation when I was a boy that I was abused. And again, some people are highly sensitive to those things. I think at the time I was in second grade, so I would have been, what is that, like 8? I don't really know. So I was a very young child, and I know that some people hear about abuse to children and it triggers them. It sets them off real bad. I am not that person. I've grown cold over the years. I've grown pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Desensitized, I suppose, to some of the things I went through when I was a kid. To me, it's just, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, I went through that. Yeah, it definitely had a profound impact on me, but it was a long time ago, and I try to push through, but sometimes it spills out of me, and that's what we have an example of in this episode. So if those things bother you, I would encourage you just to skip this particular episode. There are a few more where we discuss some heavy topics, but I think that I don't want this to be the main content on my channel, so we're not going to make this an every episode thing. I don't want you to think that all this guy does is talk about his pain, because that's not who I am. I'm more complex than that. My child abuse is part of me, and it has shaped me into the man I am today. But I'm ultimately a human being, and human beings are, complicated. So, yep, maybe skip this one if those things bother you. Otherwise, stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I pass you off to me with the actual episode. Hello, Internet. Welcome back to more of our our apartment rat series. I think I've shaken off most of the rust from waking up and kind of having a not great morning. So I think we're going to... What is that icon? Look at that. Look at this thing beneath me here. I don't know what that is. Well, it's not a towel, I would bet. I don't know what that is. Okay, let's unzoom. Anyway, I think I've shaken off some of the morning nonsense. I think 8 p.m. I think we're just going to read and then go to bed. I think we're going to start reading the electronics book because I want to make... See, I don't know what is required for the recharging station. I've never really made it before. I don't think I've needed to. Not computer science. Oh, we don't have... I thought we had an electron... What's a transistor? Okay. So we'll read what's a transistor. I'm going to run out of wood again, I think. Yeah. It's tough, I wake up, the PTSD. So a couple episodes I told you about, I had a bad dream and woke up kind of not knowing where I was. And it's like the PTSD is still new to me. We're going to pick up something else to smash wood with. We're going through wood very quickly, and I think it's related to the turn timers. Let's pick up the home wrecker. We're never going to use it for anything anyway. So if it gets damaged, it's not a big deal. And I think we've smashed a lot of the wood here. Apparently mailboxes are primarily metal, which is fine, but we'll gather the wood from these. So I had a nightmare and all that jazz, but it's still new to me. The PTSD I've only had for maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years, something like that. Or maybe I had it for a long time and just it wasn't so severe. But it seems like lately, before I was medicated, it was real bad. And then when I was on proper medication, it didn't bother me as much. And now, of course, I'm off my meds right now, waiting to see my psych, which, by the way, as an update, is just a couple days away. Is on Thursday this week. It's currently Tuesday as I am recording this. I guess we'll drag everything, including the rags, back to base. It's going to be slow going. So I should be medicated again pretty soon. We'll see how that shakes out. I kind of feel like, like I said, the depression is very old, very something I'm even comfortable with. I didn't mean to walk onto this pile. So we're going to use advanced inventory to transfer the wood. Move 30. Move 31. And then we'll put everything else on the unsorted pile. No. There we go. The door hinges, the nails. I don't know why there are batteries and... Okay, I don't know what this pile is. I thought it was melee weapons. It's a little weird that there are batteries there, I guess because I picked them up somewhere. Whatever. Move all those, and then the wood panel also can go on the wood pile. So we have wood. Yeah, my depression is very old and something I'm very used to. In fact, I would say my depression is almost comforting because it's something that I've lived with for, if I'm being honest, 20 plus years. I can remember being, I think I was probably 7 or 8 when I first thought about killing myself, which is really horrendous and really a horrible thing to say out loud, but that's true. Because my life was not good and I didn't know how to handle it, and I was young, and I just thought, well, if you were dead, you wouldn't have to hurt so bad. And anyway, that's super a bummer. So let's not talk about that. The PTSD, though, is relatively new. The trauma and the dream stuff, the social anxiety is very new as well. When I was growing up, I loved people. Like, I loved being around people. People made me feel like, when I was a teenager, it seemed like no matter who I talked to, it was very like validating, because I enjoyed talking to people. I enjoyed the art of conversation. And then I also really liked when I would talk to people and they were like really into things I was talking about, where you talk to, maybe you talk to an older man and he seems really interested in what you have to say, and he tells you like, oh, you're much smarter than most kids your age, and you're much, you're this and you're that, and it always made me feel better, and I think we'll just boil some noodles because I think we have a crap ton of pasta. We'll make 2 macaronis, I guess. We eat those. Macaronis. Just boiled noodles. So we're being hungry a lot. I think we're going to reach out into the town and explore some more houses to try and find a little bit more food. We do have a nice stack of food. It's just I try not to eat canned food as much as I can. We'll heat up some Toastums. They have a lot of calories in them because we're struggling a little bit for calories right now. And again, it's not that we don't have things. It's just I would prefer to save some of this stuff. Eat some Toastums, some warm Toastums. If I can find them in the list, because I'm blind. 2, 3, we'll eat 3 Toastums. We'll have some water, which should put us up to full. We don't want to drink the unclean water. And we are tired, so we will go to sleep. Oh, it's already daylight. Well, that's fine. We'll wake up in the evening, and then we'll go explore the town, I guess. I was going to make a pickaxe and a sledgehammer today, but we can do that really anytime. So, like, the depression is super... Like, it's a bummer, don't get me wrong. To constantly think about how bad the world is and how unhappy you are is miserable. And I'm sure that there are some people who are listening to this who relate to that. It is very unpleasant. But the social anxiety, this general paranoia, the I'm afraid to leave my house sometimes, that stuff is new and I hate it. I want to be able to go places. Sometimes, since I saw my stepdad a few weeks ago, now I'm like afraid to go shopping because it turns out he lives in the area, and it's like I really don't want to bump into him because last time I did, I had a little breakdown, and so I don't know if I ever went into detail on that. I saw him and it freaked me out, and I thought I was going to pass out. I had that thing where, like if you stand up too fast and your vision kind of like maybe gets red at the edges and constricts and you can't really see very well. I had that, and then I couldn't really breathe, so I thought I was gonna pass out. So I just sat down on the floor of the Burlington like a freaking idiot, and just kind of sat there until I was sure I wasn't gonna pass out. And then I snuck away because I didn't want him to see me. So that was awful. And now when I leave my house, I think, oh, I'm gonna bump into him. He's gonna see me. He's gonna know who I am. He's gonna try to do something, which is irrational. What are we doing? What am I doing? I want to eat something. Still Toastums are good. We eat a couple Toastums. We need more calories. I'm going to eat some of this hardtack even though it never goes bad. We eat some candy. Eat some potato chips. That should be pretty good on calories. And we'll drink some water. It's still daylight. Maybe we will go down and start work on like a sledgehammer. And then we'll head out once it gets nighttime. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Do I have all my tools? Have my tools. We can drop the home wrecker. We can drop the book. Home wrecker. Book. And we will wield the nail. Or no, we will wield the quarterstaff because we upgraded. Yeah, so like the leaving my house being weird is still relatively new. And I freaking hate it. And it's very hindering. It really... So we still never found lumps of steel, so I guess we just gather up tons of chunks of steel. But why don't we go smash a car? Well, I did just drop my smashing item. I guess we'll go look for chunks of steel. We've gathered up so much. Can you smash? Can you I don't know. Can you butcher metal? Because I feel like the sheet metals can be broken down into component metals. Sheet metal. Into scrap metal times 5. That seems fine. What about this? Small sheet metal. So we want to butcher the small ones. Can't do this more than a couple at a time. So I'm still not used to coping with the PTSD related symptoms and the social anxiety and all that stuff. Still pretty new, still pretty weird to me. The depression is like... We still don't have... Oh, I picked up scrap metal when I needed chunks of steel. Well, we'll drop this here for later crafting. Why don't we smash a vehicle and see what we get? I don't know what you get. Probably just scrap metal and crap that we don't want anyway. Actually, a ton of stuff. Okay, so that's quite a lot. Chunks... That's what a lump of steel looks like, so we'll grab those because those were the fewest required. Of course, our heart is going to beat out of our chest. So I think that does it. I think that's enough metal. So now we know we can just smash a vehicle. Do we want the sledge or the pickaxe? I think... Oh, we can't make a pickaxe yet. That sucks, because that was my... Okay, I might have to look up how to make a pickaxe because that was like... That was our way into the labs without a keycard. Because a sledgehammer isn't going to do it, I don't think. How do you still not have... Still don't have enough lumps of steel. We also don't have a chisel. Why don't we make a chisel? Oh... And we'll use the scrap metal, of course, because we have more of that. So we'll make a chisel. Yeah, the depression has been with me my entire life since I've been a kid. So it's like 20 plus years of dealing with my depression. And it's almost comfortable because at a certain point you start to embrace it. Like, why should I be different? Why should I work on myself? Why should I? Let's just wallow. Let's just be this person. This is my natural state of being. I'll just be like this. Which of course is just... is the depression lying to you. You don't have to live that way. It doesn't have to be like that. You really can overcome depression. And so the last couple weeks, I've been really depressed. And it's like, not that big of a deal. It sucks. It's not fun. But it's old hat, you know. I've been there before. I've lived with it for decades of my life. We'll check out next door. I think there were a bunch of zombies here, but we'll check it out. And we could grab the rest of our lumps of steel, I guess, off of this smashed up vehicle. So we should have enough now. We'll pick up a few more because I think they're larger pieces of metal that might be valuable. Aluminum ingot. I don't know that that's very valuable. I mean, I guess since we're here, we'll pick up a bunch of stuff. You know, you live with it for a long time and it becomes your norm. It becomes normalcy. It becomes expected. And it's not healthy, and it's a hard life to live. Take the electric motor. We're overweight, that's okay. Oh, we're immediately out of stamina. Okay, so we'll drop the large electric motor, although I would like to have it. Are we still overweight? No, we're not. We just aren't recovering stamina yet. You know. Yeah, I remember being 7, 8, thinking about hurting myself, thinking about way worse stuff. It's, you know, when you're an abused kid, like I keep talking about that, it's like my childhood abuse, when I was a kid, I used to think it was normal to be abused. You know, I thought that what I was going through was completely normal and every kid dealt with it. Looks like we missed some pulps over here. Cash card will take, root beer will take, cash card, and a medium battery. That's great because we can throw that in a welder, which will have value over time. Cash card, a lot of dead things were here. Take the lighter. We'll head in here and see what's what. Big empty house. I hate these houses. Nothing in them. Yeah, when I was a kid, you know, you think it's normal. You think that that's what normalcy is. You see other kids and you think that they're going through what you're going through. And I hope to God that's not true. And at the time I thought that that was true, but it's not. Kids, that's not normal. That's not the average thing. That's not what everybody goes through. But I didn't know that when I was a child. And so I would go to school and I would think, oh, well, they're dealing with the same things I'm dealing with. Or I would see, oh, it was already pulped. Well, we just exposed ourselves to a crap ton of really for no reason. So we'll let them come over here and we'll try to take them one at a time. I would think with the quarterstaff we should be able to do that without too much problem. And I would see normal adjusted kids. And like at one point in my life, I was involved in the church. And I would see all these kids that were like well adjusted. Kids that had good home lives. And I would always think like it was a joke. It was a fake. It was, they actually like, oh yeah, he seems nice when he's at church. But when he goes home, I bet he beats his kids. Or I bet he is a molester or something, you know, because I couldn't accept that there are actually like normal, healthy parents out there. And so for me, I know I talk about the abuse sometimes, but it's like, it's still hard for me to process that it wasn't normal. Even to this day, I think about it and I'm like, oh yeah, well, it happened, no, whatever. And I've kind of, it's not that I've gotten over it because I haven't, it still affects me. But when people talk to me about it, I try to minimize it. I try to make it like, oh, well, it didn't have that big of an impact on me. Or like, oh, I'm a survivor, I came through it, no big deal. But that's like, man, I don't know how to say what I want to say. Sometimes when I tell people stories about my childhood abuse, there was this guy, and he was gay. And we were talking to each other. We were friends. And he told me about how when he was a kid, his parents found out he was gay. This guy was like in his 50s or late 40s. He said, oh, you know, when I was a kid, my parents found out I was gay. I was like 13. They threw me out of the house. I was living on the street. And I was listening to his story and I was like, oh man, that's really, really terrible that a parent would disown a child like that. I think that that's horrible. And, you know, I was empathizing with him and we were just talking. And then he asked me about my childhood. And I was like, oh, you know, it was not good. And I started telling him, he was like, well, what does that mean? You know, can you give me an example? And I told him this story about how I was a kid and we didn't have Christmas because I was poor. And we had someone that donated some like pup tents to us as Christmas presents. And we had these set up in our attic, and I was upstairs with my stepdad. And it was one of the few good moments I can remember with my stepdad. We were kind of wrestling around on the bed, just goofing off, and it was like I wasn't worried about anything. I wasn't scared of him. I was just being a kid, having fun. And he rolled over. I managed to like flip him, and he rolled over and crushed this pup tent. And he was furious because it was like we didn't have nice things, and we had just broken something that someone had, donated to us through like the Big Brothers program or something like that, one of those charity organizations. And he was so furious that he took the frame of the tent, which was PVC pipe, and proceeded to like bludgeon me in the face. Like, that's pretty, maybe I should put a spoiler warning at the beginning of this and say, hey, child abuse discussion in this episode. But so I remember that, and it was one of the more severe abuses. It was not the only one. He would like throw knives at me and darts and stuff. It's like I was telling him these things, and I realized that he was next to me crying, and I was like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you crying? And he's like, that's like the most heinous thing I've ever heard about someone treating a child that way. Like, that's horrible. I can't believe you had to deal with that. And in my head, my brain says, yeah, but you deserved it. Like, yeah, you were bad. Yeah, there was something wrong with you, so you deserve to be abused. And that's the depression. And it's like, when I think about my childhood abuse, sometimes I think, man, I went through a lot. Man, that's horrible. He should be in prison. And then other times I think, it wasn't so bad, or, you deserved it, or, you kind of were a bad kid, and so it's so hard to navigate that because you blame yourself, and you spend years feeling that way. Like, I spent years thinking I was human garbage, like that I didn't deserve anything, that I was a terrible person, that everyone around me could see that I was a terrible person, and if they were talking to you, it was just because they had some like sense of obligation to you. It wasn't that they actually liked you, it was just that you were there and they were being polite or whatever. And your brain, all that's all depression. That depression is telling you, whispering in your ear, the 1,000 little voices saying, you're garbage, she's gonna leave you, you're garbage, they hate you, they just don't say it, all that stuff. Oh, I'm rambling. Yeah, I don't even know why I started talking about this. So my depression is not new. It's something I've lived with for a long time. It's familiar, it's unpleasant, but it's not intolerable because I've dealt with it for a long time. I've learned to cope. Most of them are unhealthy coping mechanisms, as my group therapist would say. I learned to, I wrote mostly. I would live in a fantasy world to try and avoid the reality of my situation. Really want this soy milk. I guess we can just come back. We'll go make a trip home. I learned to write a fictional world where I could shape the world the way I wanted it to be. That was a way of coping, but ultimately is not a good way of coping because I used it in replacement for the real world. Like, I built a world I could be happy with so I didn't have to live in the real world. Video games were another big compensation for me, a coping mechanism for me. I would play video games for literally, like, I think the longest I ever played video games was like 28 hours straight when I was a teenager. Basically anything that distracted me from the real world. I would, there was some sex addiction, which we're not going to talk about because people really judge you when you talk about sex addiction because they don't believe that that's a real addiction. But it is. It's an emotional addiction, and it's also a physiological response that you have to physical contact. Like, there's an actual chemical response that aids that addiction. People don't accept that, though. So I learned to cope, but not in good ways, and now I'm healthy. I've been living clean for, I guess I've been clean, my sobriety, so to speak, would be about 9 years. I'm very proud of that. Wow, just thinking about that almost makes me cry. That's how emotionally unstable I've been lately. Thinking about being clean for so long is a little overwhelming. It's a very I'm very proud of it. I'm glad to be there. I'm glad I've been living a healthy life for the most part. It's just without this medication and with seeing my abuser again, and it's been a little rough. I've been tempted to go back to some of that stuff that I used to avoid. I've been tempted to drink a little bit, tempted to view a bunch of porn, but I don't do that anymore. I'm tempted to go out. Like that's part of it, right? Is like that addiction, all those little voices in your head that are like, why don't you just go get laid, you'll feel better. It's like, well, I don't really want to do that. I kind of want to meet an actual nice girl and maybe forge a relationship. Like, nah, why don't you just go get laid, or why don't you go out and get drunk, or why don't you you never really smoked weed, now be a great time to go smoke some weed. And it's like, well, maybe not though. Maybe hold off on that a little bit until you kind of get your feet under you again, and you stop struggling so hard. When you make decisions in an emotional place, you tend to make not the best decisions. So you slip inside to try and keep them in just coming one at a time. So yeah, man, this commentary lately. Apparently you like it. I feel like a rambling idiot, but it's that internal dialogue. I believe it or not, this is going through my head pretty much every day, and I'm a textbook overthinker. I struggle a lot with my struggles. It's been a lot easier the last couple of years, but it doesn't mean they go away. Like I said, many years of sobriety at this point, but that doesn't mean, that you don't just want to go out and do stuff. It doesn't mean the impulses are gone. It's just, you've learned to control them over the course of a decade of sobriety and treatment, and, therapy helps. I probably ought to pop over to another meeting. I used to go all the time. I used to go almost every week. Well, I guess basically every week I would go to group therapy, and then I would see my psych pretty much whenever I felt like I needed it. Just empty garage. But I haven't been going as much lately. I haven't seen my psych in probably 6 months. Well, over 6 months, because of the whole fiasco with being discharged for not showing up, even though I didn't have an appointment scheduled, etc. And then my group therapy, I went last week, I think. But I could probably stand to go a little bit more. Probably would help. They help ground me. Like, if you're not in therapy and you think maybe it would be good for you, I would encourage you to do so. I found that it has really helped me over the course. Like, I believe most people probably need therapy. And there's a level of embarrassment to it. Like, oh, I don't feel like I should need that. I should be able to overcome things on my own. Yeah, I get that impulse. I get why you would feel that way. But there are people who literally do this, 8 hours a day for 30 years and have quite a lot of experience and can give you some pointers. And I think the thing for me with therapy is that they help reframe those negative thoughts. Like when I saw my stepdad, my first thought was like, he's going to hurt me. And then I thought, this son of a bitch gets to have a wife and kids, and I'm so alone. This man who did horrible things to me gets to have a nice little life. And they help reframe that stuff. Like the first thing she said was like, you don't know that. I was like, what do you mean? And she says, well, you don't know that he has a good life at all. Odds are good that he doesn't have a good life. If he hasn't changed and he's living the same way he used to live, odds are good that he doesn't have a good relationship. Yeah, he might have a wife, but that does not mean they're good together. I was like, yeah, but at least he gets laid. I don't get, just stupid. I shouldn't have said that. I was just being stupid. And she was like, yeah, but you don't know that either, For all you know, they hate each other and they're on the brink of divorce. Like, for all you know, she's not even living with him. For all you know, she is finally got the courage to go to an abuse shelter or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're right. And just that simple reframing of my own thoughts, super helpful. Because you get swept up in that depression and that anger and that bitterness that's inside, and you don't see the world the right way, Maybe that sounds like nonsense. I don't know. Helps me. And that's ultimately the point. So I advocate for therapy. Probably should call the episode there. A little rambly today. Huh? Okay. So that's going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, maybe consider clicking the like button. Maybe consider subscribing if you haven't already. Maybe leave me a comment. Still don't get a lot of YouTube comments. I don't know why they don't show up in my... Like, they'll show up like 6 days later and it'll say, oh, you got a comment. So I don't know what's going on with that, but maybe you can leave me a comment. Anyway, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching, and I will be back with more Cataclysm in the near future.